G'day fans and welcome back to another exciting episode of Docky Who's DNA Reviews, whatever reviews you want to call it. I tell you what, controversy. It is wall-to-wall controversy here. I tell you what, it's dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria, total anarchy. Docky Who fans are going completely off their nut over this episode, but we're here to talk about it. Mr. Aaron, the Docky Who expert, is here to just tell everybody, chill down, calm down, it's all good. What do you reckon there, Mr. Aaron?
What wasn't it an interesting episode? There's definitely a lot to go through on this one.
There is indeed. So, as always, we're here to talk about the old Docky Who, which, of course, Greg has joined us straight away, which is absolutely fantastic. And the episode, of course, is called Rogue, which is particularly cool. And, of course, there will be spoilers for those who haven't seen it. And if you haven't seen it, definitely look away now because there are definitely some things that you don't want to be spoiled about. But if you have seen it, chances are you're a bit like us and are just chomping at the bit, keeping in mind that Aaron and I have not discussed our thoughts and views on this episode at all. Now, there's a lot to get through, so we're going to get straight into it. First things first, you wanted to mention about the fact that this was written by Kate Herron and Bryony Redmond. Is that right, Mr. Dude?
Yeah, this is unusual for this season because Russell T Davies has wrote the bulk of the episodes. The other episode that wasn't written by him was Stephen Moffat, but these are two writers that are new to Doctor Who, but they both have good pedigree in showbiz and in sci-fi circles. If you go to the next slide, you can see Loki, which is one of my favorite of the Marvel Universe shows on Disney Plus. And I think I said when Loki came out, and we talked about it a couple of years ago, the show that reminded me most of Doctor Who out of all the Marvel shows was Loki. And lo and behold, we've got the writer-director of Loki episodes and her writing partner have done an episode of Doctor Who. So I called that one 2 years ago.
Well, it would make sense considering Loki had to do with time travel, and it was almost like a Marvel version of Doctor Who to start with. When you sit and think about it, all he needed was the phone box. Guy has mentioned it's his birthday today. No place I'd rather be than hanging out with us and all nerdy folks. Oh my goodness!
Cheers to
well,
you, Guy.
happy birthday! Yes, happy birthday, Mr. Guy. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. Yes, hopefully, I can't say that we're a very good present to give you or a good gift. But as I like to say, our presence is always enough. Shane has mentioned the new Pip and Jane Bakers. Is that a joke or is that actually something?
Now, that's a joke. They're sort of known as poor writers from the original series.
Okay, fair enough. Well, of all the episodes that I've seen of this series so far, this one is probably going to have a few people wagging their tongues. As always, we're going to break it down into the good, the bad, and the ugly. So we're not going to sit here and just say everything is all of one or all of the other. And look at this, we've got an IPD has said his birthday's on Thursday. Well, there we go. It's birthdays all round. What can I say? Party hard for everybody.
That would be Ian. So cheers to you, Ian, as well.
Very, very cool. It's very funny. Ian sends us messages before we go on air, and then once we're broadcasting, doesn't say a single word throughout the entire episode. So it's good to see, mate. He popped up and said hello. All right, we're going to get straight into it. Yeah, hang on. Don't the horses have their birthday in November or something like that? Anyway, whatever. So we're going to get straight into it. Okay, so we got the very, very cool. I was going to say we're going to get straight into the good, and it's be interesting to see how we dissect this particular episode, Mr. Aaron.
So
away you go.
It is interesting. We look at the good, the bad, and the ugly because we don't want to just give positive and we don't want to just give negative reviews, and we want to try and highlight everything in the episodes. And this has got to be probably the most slides I put together for an episode, but we're starting with the good. And like all of the episodes that have had them this season, I think the pre-titled teasers have been quite a good hook to intrigue people to watch the episode. And I particularly liked this one because the CAD, or the villain, or the person that seemed to be, sort of the bad character, they flipped it. And it was actually the good character turned around and said, well, now I'm going to get to be you, and killed him. And I thought that was a really great way to start the episode because you did think that this CAD bad villain was going to be the alien. That's what I thought anyway.
Yeah, look, I totally agree with you. The misdirect saying that the dude on top of the veranda was the bad guy, and he wasn't the bad guy, and the other guy who was the bad guy, and we didn't know that at the time. It worked well. And, of course, once you have the moment where the bad guy, I don't know what they're called, right? But the bad guy takes over the other guy, Yeah, it came out of nowhere, and it was like, oh, that's really cool, because up to that point you thought they were just two old English dudes having a bit of a gas bag. So yeah, I totally agree with you.
Yeah.
It actually worked quite well, and you go, oh, I'm intrigued now. I want to see where this is going to go, which is very, very groovy. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a bit of a shell game going through this episode with the villains. Actually, they did, which I do like. They did fool me a couple of times, but again, the setting was good. Now, when I say the setting, we come back to the setting later because it's also, one of the things that I put in the bad. But what I mean by that is they went to locations. They went to 3 stately homes in the UK, and it looked like it was just one location, but the inside hall was one house and the outside was another house, and I think the gardens were somewhere else. So I did think again, with this whole season, Doctor Who has uniformly set a new bar for just how the series looks, be it sci-fi alien planets or historical. I can't fault anything they've done so far, really.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, sometimes you can look at an episode and go, oh, this is clearly where the money is. All those extras, all those costumes, hiring out the venues. Whereas if you look at like Dot and Bubble last week, it was pretty much just one person, right? And maybe with a couple of extra people chucked in. But this one, they would have needed all these people. So clearly a bit of money was spent on this. And I agree with you. I mean, it was set in 1813 and it really looked the part and it worked really, really well. And you go, this is kind of cool. And then you see how the Doctor and Ruby have sort of just mixed in. And of course, straight away, you ask the question of like, well, how are they just there without anybody realizing that they don't actually belong there? And of course, they explain that. And I thought that explanation was actually very, very effective. So it was very, very groovy. And yeah, it's all about how they can dance, the old style dancing. Is this a common thing about the psychic earrings and being able to program into people's brains? And is that a new thing? Has that been around before?
We've had technology like it before. River Song had earrings. I think they might have had poison in them though. But it isn't something that's totally new. There have been things like this before. I did think it was good. Again, we've had the TARDIS be fun, where the Doctor's taken Ruby to destinations that she's loved to go to, like when we had the Beatles in the 60s and stuff like this. And here she's obviously a Bridgerton fan. And so the Doctor's taken her and giving her the real experience. I mean, and for a fan of a show like that, where she loves all the intrigue and the dancing and the ballrooms and stuff, it's really fun watching her to react, to be able to actually go and do that. And again, as you mentioned, we had the psychic earrings, which are mentioned, and the particularly interesting mention, which I picked up straight away on the first time through, remember not to put them into battle mode. So straight away we know there's a battle mode, and Mr. Chekhov pops up with his gun straight away in the very first scene there. So I did like that and put that in the good column.
Yeah, because I thought when they're doing the dancing, I go, how does that work, right? And yeah, they've got it programmed directly into their head, which of course is a very clever concept. Now, of course, you can argue as to say, well, if these things can do that, can they be used for all these other things? So imagine they're in a scenario. Ruby says, I don't know how to use an industrial blowtorch. Put the earrings on. Boof, there we go. I know how to use one. I don't know how to operate an oil rig out in the middle of the Pacific. Put the earrings on. Now I know what buttons to push. So it could be one of those scenarios where it's like they've invented this technology that can get around this particular problem, but why don't they use it more often? But for this episode and for what they were doing, I had no issue with it. Yeah.
Lindsay needed those episodes in Dot and Bubble. Oh, put the earrings on. Now I can walk.
Yeah, well, exactly right. So it's a great idea, and it was good that and that they were able to do the dancing and all the rest of it. So I quite liked it. I thought it was actually very, very good myself. So yeah, good fun.
Well, and then we have what I thought was another really good written scene, and I do think this was a well written script, and we'll talk about some of the things. It was well written, but some of it was just not what I like. But I do like how they juxtaposed her, a modern woman, being spoken to, back in the time when women were not, allowed to speak out or say anything. And I did think it was particularly interesting that they have this conversation. And he, of course, she doesn't know, is an alien at the time. So you've got all these different levels of thing going on where he's trying to act how a gentleman would act at the time. You've got the Duchess who is, still human at this point, reacting to both of them. And then you've got Ruby, who's affronted by what he's saying to her and basically tells him to piss off and calls him like a piece of cheese because his dialogue is deliberately cheesy. And I thought that was really good too. So I was liking it. as we start unraveling the story.
So when the aliens take over the people, do they take over any of the memories and the knowledge of the environment they're in as well, or are they just gone blank?
Well, this is the thing we've got to talk about later, because one of the things I don't like in scripts is where the rules change, and you'll see, we'll talk about it later. Some of the aliens are very awkward and don't know, about the time period at all. And then we've got another one that blends in so perfectly and is so knowing in how she is there. You don't even realize she's an alien until it's revealed, kind of thing. And I do think, that isn't really explained properly.
Yeah, because one of the things that I thought of, and I think you normally get around it in all period dramas, is that if a person from the modern era went back 200 years ago, they say, based on how the English language evolves, a modern person couldn't actually converse with someone from 200 years back because the language is too different. I mean, you just look at some of the Shakespeare stuff. And I think it's 150, 200 years is the limit. And beyond that, you just can't speak to anybody, even if you are speaking English. But I thought, okay, maybe we're hearing it as normal colloquial English, but in their language, when they speak, they're actually speaking the proper tongue. But the fact that Ruby, you're right, sort of like became herself and was seeing how the world was back then, it would be a massive culture shock to say, how do these people operate? But this is how it was back then. It would be another couple of hundred years or thereabouts before, or at least 100 years before things actually changed. That's fine. So your old lady makes a reappearance. Is that right, dude?
Yeah, we have one of the briefer appearances again, where again, the mystery woman who's been in every episode in a different role. This time she's just a portrait. I mean, that's one of the portraits the Ghostbusters need to come in and examine, really. It's like one of those mysteries, but it isn't elaborated on at all in this episode, more than she's a not a descendant, one of the previous people from the house who's passed away, and then we move on with the story pretty quick.
So when she says, the woman in the black says about the picture, the eyes follow her about the room, which you've highlighted there. Was there something in that?
I don't know. I thought there was going to be, because she was obviously picking that picture out as something that was creepier than the other pictures, but then that was it. That was all we went into in this episode about the mystery woman. Or was it?
Indeed. I love this one. Okay, stop asking questions to me. Just consume the product and then wait for more products. So says the house and the mouse. But questions, I've got to ask questions. I mean, that's just what I'm here for. So it's a very, very cool. So Ruby gets to finally experience a traditional English lady versus an alien. Effectively, he was an alien at this point. This guy wasn't he? I completely lost track.
Yes. Well, what I loved about this was Ruby is doing what she really wanted to do. She's living an episode of Bridgerton. So she's not just dancing, she's following people. I didn't do any shots of it, but she's looking them through books in the library, because that's the kind of thing they do on the show. So I do like she wholeheartedly threw herself into the role and was actually then getting the intrigue that she would get if she was watching an episode of the show. But the aliens are doing this on purpose because they love the show as well, or it's supposed they love the drama. So it's working on different levels for me so far. I thought this was all quite intriguing.
Yeah, it's interesting. So for people like us, it would be the equivalent of actually being transported into like an actual sci-fi show. I was going to say as a joke earlier on, if Ruby was a Star Trek fan, could the Doctor then transport it to a Star Trek thing? But of course, Star Trek is fake. But would it be the equivalent of like like in Galaxy Fest, she ends up on a spaceship and there's like, oh my God, this is just like Star Trek, and gets completely absorbed into that, which is effectively what we would do. And I like the idea that she starts speaking to the girl, and they're both, the other woman is saying that how her language is so different, and how Ruby is so forthright. And I guess it does show very, very quickly the evolution between how females acted was it 1813 to how they act now in 2024, and it's a vast change in evolvement regarding their attitudes, which is, it worked really, really well. But I do like the fact that the girl started, even the word okay, you thought okay would be around for thousands of years, but obviously it hasn't been. So I thought that was very, very cool. The wheels are about to wobble. That's an interesting. Okay. Maybe they are. So there you go. But they're not going to do that until we see a cloaked ship. Oh, Star Trek. Speaking of Star Trek.
And this is just a little scene, but I did like it. It sort of plays into that no one really notices the TARDIS, so it just fits in everywhere, which they've talked about with perception filters everywhere. But he's kind of like, mine's behind that shed. And he's like, that is my ship. And he's like, why isn't it cloaked? And he's like, well, it's behind a tree. So I did think that was a good exchange. I mean, I'm maybe pulling these good moments from all over the place, but I did smile when that happened.
Yeah, it worked as a gag, and you are right. What it's saying is that this particular alien, the rogue guy, doesn't have the perception filter. He knew that there was something there, as opposed to everybody else in the grounds who would have just bypassed it completely. So, but it's very funny to class it as a shed. You know, I mean, it's a cupboard at the very least. It's not a shed, but each their own. It's not a problem. Now, when this came up on the screen, and I'm going to show this slide in a sec. Even I was impressed. I thought, oh, well done. And that was when they showed the other doctors.
So this was probably one of the high points for the episode. Every doctor from the modern series, I think, has kind of done a "I'm a Time Lord from Gallifrey" speech to someone at some point. This is particularly good because it has sort of all the holograms of the previous doctors because of the technology they're using to scan him. But let's dive deep into this, Dags, because what they've done there, they've put in Richard E. Grant, which is not a canon doctor. He has played the Doctor in a comedy skit called The Curse of the Fatal Death, and he also was on a web episode of Doctor Who, which Russell T Davies explicitly said when the show came back, we're ignoring that, that's not canon. And now they've brought him back. And this is interesting because if we're in the land of fiction or if we're in another dimension, all of the stuff we know about the history of the show starts to wobble a bit. And by putting him in there, like someone who no one knew was going to be counted as a doctor, just as one of the faces going around, is a really cool thing to do. And Richard E. Grant, I say, would be awesome if he turned up as the Doctor on screen.
Okay. So I obviously didn't pick up on that, but you didn't, and start again. You picked up on it, and you're not the only one. So, which was very, very groovy. But I thought when they did it, I think they're doing it in reverse order too, from like 14, 13, whatever, 12. And I thought that was actually a really, really cool moment. I was curious to see how far back they're going to go, but the fact they did it at all was particularly cool. It would have been funny if the road guy had said, "Oh, hang on, I recognise that one there. We've crossed paths somewhere else." But anyway, it wasn't to be. This one is a bit of a contentious one. So you put these guys in the aliens, whoever these people are.
Now, it's interesting because I put them as good as in the alien design because you don't see a lot of bird aliens. And I was impressed by the actual practical effects of the masks. And what I really liked, having the whole family, and each one was a different bird. So you have like an owl-looking one, and you have different ones. You have a parrot one with a blue head, and so they did impress me, and I did think there will be people cosplaying these aliens as families because they're so different. I watched the behind the scenes, and it was all practical effects, and then they did the Ewok thing where they had the inner eye of the birds blinking sometimes independently from the other eyes, which I like that extra level of detail. So I gave them a good as a tick just for their appearance.
So that one on the right-hand side down here, that's a parrot, is it?
Yes.
Yeah, the budget ran out when they did that one because that looks rubbish to me. I'm going to admit, yeah, you're right. As aliens, and I agree. Okay, from the makeup side and all that, yeah, totally get you. But that's probably about as far as the good goes regarding that.
Yes.
So, have these aliens, they ever been around before, these bird things?
No, they've had very few bird aliens on Doctor Who. And in fact, in most sci-fi, I don't really remember many bird aliens. There was the animated Star Trek, maybe, and a couple of others.
You are so far behind the 8 ball, dude. You've obviously forgotten about Prince Volton and his Hawkman from Flash Gordon. You are so... Oh, dude.
And also Hawkman from Buck Rogers as well. But these look a bit more updated than them. So, yes.
Wasn't the girl from Space 1999 for the second season? Is she related to birds at all?
Maya? I don't remember.
No, I can't
So
remember. Anyway, we digress. A slight bit of a
yes.
nerdy talk there. Sticking with the good. Okay, so away we go.
So we also had, I thought it was interesting. As you can see, we've jumped through a lot of these episodes. So we're going to come back and talk about other things. But it got to the end where there was the wedding. And I did think that was an interesting concept where they actually intrigued and want to have a wedding. And um, they say some stuff that I don't know if it will come up later in the series. They're talking about Gordon's alive. Talking about how it's the series. So this is one of the things we'll talk about later. They're talking about this is the series. This is like the series finale, and there's going to be a wedding. And I do wonder if, because they're birds, they're parroting what's going to happen in the final episode of the Doctor Who series. I do think a lot of this new series is about words and wordplay. That may come into it or it may not. But I did think if they've seeded that in this episode and it's revealed a couple of episodes later, we've already had, there's always a twist at the end and things like that. So I thought maybe that's good. Maybe I'm wrong,
I kind of didn't I didn't understand it. I got a bit lost. I go, what is the deal with the wedding? And it was just the way it was presented. Now hearing you talk about it, saying, "Oh, it's supposed to be the season finale of a TV show because these guys are cosplayers or whatever." Now it makes sense, but the execution of it didn't work. I was confused. I go, "What the hell's going on? Who's getting married to who and why?" And the fact that they're yelling and squawking and carrying on, I got lost. Maybe if you're a younger person, you dialed right into it. Literally little old me. I kind of just couldn't figure that one out at all. So, but now
Yeah.
that you've explained it, I see where they're coming from. But I think may have been done a bit differently. Speaking of things a bit differently, this is up in the good.
Okay, so this is really controversial. As you might have seen, I haven't put any of the relationship with Rogue or any of his scenes really through the whole episode as a good. Now, this is, I guess, a controversial kiss. It wasn't so controversial for me. I mean, they had Captain Jack, as you can see next to the good, kissing the Ninth Doctor. It was a different situation, but we have had the Doctor kiss men before. Why I've put this in the good is because in the Chibnall era, we got to the end of it, and Yaz and the Doctor were in a will they, weren't they relationship. And in the final episode, there was a couple of places where fans really, really wanted them to kiss and seal the deal before she regenerated. And I just think the writing was too gutless to go there. So, aside from whether you think it's a good thing or a bad thing being a same gender kiss or whatever, I do give them a good for actually having the guts to go there. If that's how they want to go, it's probably not what I would have wanted to see, but I put it as a good because obviously it's a hard decision for them to make, and it's going to get them a lot of controversy online and a lot of people going, I love this, or I hate this, or this is how it should be. So I've put that as a good just to show that I'm, happy to go along and see where it goes, and that they're brave to do that.
Because they worked it into the story, I'll allow it. I'll allow it. Yeah, look at me. Because I don't even know who the characters are, right? The other dude, the rogue Dufred, had to steal the Duvalacca off the Doctor, and that's how he did it, right?
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I agree with what you say. My issue is, and I don't want to make a big song and dance about this. I know that the series is now aimed at family audiences, and there's a whole argument about Disney pushing the whole LGBT whatever thing. And the fact that it occurred, all right, so be it, Jedi. It was long, it was drawn out, and it was like saying, how cool are we? We are breaking all these rules. Look at us. We're going to piss all these fans off. Other fans are going to go, this is awesome. But as a family show, it's questionable, right? So, but at the very least, it was part of the story. The rogue guy was using it to steal the thing off the Doctor, and I kind of got that. There was a lot of issues regarding this entire relationship that I had problems with. Me, as a non-Doctor Who fan who doesn't even watch this show, had issues with it. So go figure that, which I'm sure we're going to bring up later on. So I could see why they did it and all the rest of it, but I think the reasoning behind it was there was an agenda, effectively. Okay, yeah. It was done intentionally to get a lot of tongues wagging, which it has in this instance. So that I don't agree with. It's done for a purpose, not because the story needed it. But anyway, we move on.
And the other thing that I thought stood out again in this episode is how good a companion Ruby is. we're going to go back over it when we look at the bad. The Doctor was totally out of his depth this episode. He dropped the ball on a number of occasions, and it was basically up to Ruby to be smart enough to look after herself. I mean, there's the throwaway line about the earrings, but she remembered it, which a lot of people would have just been shocked and not done. And the other side of it is in Doctor Who, whenever there's a relationship, it's often brushed over really fast, and Ruby didn't let that happen. She is such a good friend to the Doctor. She said, hey, you don't have to be like that. You can sort of have a reaction to this, and we can hug and have a moment, and then we can move on. And I thought, you know what, that so doesn't happen in Doctor Who, that it was actually nice to see people behaving normally rather than okay, we're off to our next adventure after this massive drama has just happened and it's swept under the rug kind of thing. So I thought her character development has been exceptional this whole series.
Yeah, I've got no problem with that whatsoever. The whole thing with the hugging, they're trying to humanize someone who's not human, right? Otherwise,
Yeah.
they would have done this decades ago, right? 16 doctors later, whatever it is, all right? So if the Doctor is a character who stays a certain way and has always stayed a certain way, to suddenly go, oh, no, we're now going to humanize him. Well, you could have done that back in the 1980s. I hear you. I totally get it. But it's almost like saying, oh, we're now going to change this process that we've had for this entire time. The guy is not connected to the companions. But I agree with you from her perspective. She is connected to him, and I've got no problem with that. I like this one. Pointing out the obvious counterpoint, Disney Plus is streaming the first Omen. Yeah, they had the Star Channel, dude. Even I know that. They show a lot of rated R movies on Disney. Anyway, so that was the end of the goods. Okay, so whether you agree with them or not, that was the end of the goods. All right, guess what, fans? Now we're getting to the really contentious stuff. It's the bad. So we're kicking off back at the dinner or the dance thing.
Okay, so this is totally a personal thing. I don't like Bridgerton and I don't watch it. So when I see an episode that's going to be set in that universe, instantly for me, this is already the one that I'm not looking forward to this season. And unless the story is freaking fireworks and one of the best stories ever, it's not going to work for me. And I just thought there was too much waffle and flirting and I guess Bridgerton stuff. So anyone who likes that era, it'd be fantastic. For me, it just dragged, and especially how the Doctor was behaving, I just thought it was a very average episode.
Yeah, okay, we'll get to the Doctor behaving situation soon. I had no problem with it personally myself, so but I didn't realize they're trying to recreate an actual TV series. But the actual setting, I was fine with me. All right.
Okay, probably for me, and this probably hinges for viewers whether they like the episode or not, is the Doctor's relationship with Rogue. We never get the name. I think the name is bad. We have the Master and the Rani and the Mistress and Missy and all these one name things. Do we really need a bounty hunter called Rogue? It was one of those things. It came across to me as more of a pretentious name than a realistic name, and then they have the banter with I'm the Doctor, just the Doctor, and I'm Rogue, just Rogue. But the thing that annoyed me more, we've already got this character. He's called Captain Jack. And John Barrowman is a fine actor, and there's been things that happen in his career, which means maybe he won't ever return to Doctor Who. But he still has a massive fan base from what we saw over the weekend because he was at Comic-Con here. I would have much prefer, rather than Captain Jack Light, like he was a time agent. This guy's a bounty hunter. They both are American. They both have exactly the same accent. They both have coats. They both have the same hair. They're both about the same height. They look the same. They act the same with their flirting. I do wonder if they had written this with John Barrowman in mind and changed it, or whether because they can't have John Barrowman back, they're making another Captain Jack character to fill that void. So that was a bit disappointing.
Yeah, it didn't work for me. A bounty hunter thing. I thought, oh, we're back into the Star Wars universe all of a sudden, are we? I don't know if it's Doctor Who's had bounty hunters before, but I thought it was pretty whimsical. The thing I had a real issue with, and it's like me, as I said, I'm a non-fan. I really don't give a rat's ass about this entire series. It really did piss me off that he hooks up with this. Like the Doctor is chasing skirt, right? Putting it in blunt terms. What's happened to his companion? He's got no frigging idea, right? He's just left her on her own. She's about to get killed and die, and then by the end of it, he realizes, oh, haven't I been a complete tool? I've been too busy chasing this dude, showing him the inside of the TARDIS, completely forgetting about what's going on with all these aliens. And then when she's about to die, suddenly it's a bit of a big deal. And I thought that really irked me, right? Because as we know, the companions of the doctors are the main key thing. So if he's just suddenly met this guy out of absolute nowhere and is just hooked right into him, and you go, well, that's all well and good. But dude, what's going on back at the house with your companion? You've just completely forgotten all about it because you're now chasing a piece of ass, putting it bluntly. So that didn't work for me at all. And they broke what, as far as I was concerned, the doctor's character, right? They actually said, no, we're going to take what he's, all this established history after all these decades and just crush it in a handful and just go, nah, he's now going to go chasing a guy, showing him the inside of the ship. Away we go, right? And I thought, mate, if that should at the very least piss off hardcore Doctor Who fans, saying the Doctor should not do that. It's as simple as that. No. And as a non-fan, that upset me. So,
well, this is what I'm going to go through over and over again through this episode, because that happens a lot. But the other thing was, he's meant to be a bounty hunter. He's up there observing things. If the Doctor comes in with Ruby, why isn't he worried about Ruby? If he's up there observing things, has he not noticed the people disappearing and getting replaced? Has he not noticed any of this, happening before then? If he's got equipment that's on par with the sonic screwdriver, he can't detect anything that's happening. It just seems he was up there posing for the Doctor to see and start off this tryst relationship, which I just think was pretty average.
So you also wonder if he has a perception filter so no one notices him standing up there. Shane said they've been history bashing since 2017. It could be true. I wouldn't have a clue. But I thought, I remember hearing a long time ago, they said the Doctor never hooks into the companions, or he's on his own, right? He's a single dude. Yeah. Now all of a sudden he's looking for relationships and whatever else and wearing rings. And I was like, hang on now, where's all this? He only met the guy like an hour ago, for crying out loud. So anyway, so we move on.
Yeah, and it's not just me that's noticed it was a replacement Captain Jack. That's Captain Jack. I don't know if you think his appearance looks any closer to Rogue, but there's a couple of different web articles where Doctor Who have replaced Captain Jack, and so it is one of those things that has universally been recognised as sort of something that's happened. And I like John Barrowman's portrayal, and I don't want to see someone playing the same character but not quite.
Pissing off fans is deliberately because they don't value that type of fan anymore is not good business model. I don't know. It actually irritated me, and I thought, oh mate, dude, where's your companion? I mean, she's back. You've just let her go, and we'll get back to that later on. It kind of irked me actually, but anyway, we move on.
And again, we had the meeting where you're like, I'm the Doctor, I'm Rogue, just Rogue, what I was saying. And he's like already doing the flirting, honey, I'm here for fun. Now, that was a big issue for me, because when he went with Ruby, he might have been there for fun, but as soon as he's detecting aliens and he's telling him there's an issue there, the Doctor usually gets down to business. But this isn't the business the Doctor wants to get down to with Rogue. This is the start of, like, as you said, chasing skirt through the whole episode.
Yep. And some of this though, okay, you go first and I'll go second.
So again, when I wrote this episode, I write the goods, the bad, and the ugly as we go through, and then we look at the goods first, the bad second, the ugly last, which is discussion of everything else. If I showed you what I was writing, most of it was the Doctor's flirting too much. The Doctor's flirting too much. They get to the spaceship and he really does not really even listen to what Rogue is saying. He is trying to switch on music and dance with him. He's trying to flirt and find out stuff about him. He's telling him stuff about himself. He's in danger of dying, and he doesn't even really take that seriously because he obviously has a crush on Rogue. And I just thought, if you're at the point where you're just about to be killed and you can't step off of something, the sonic screwdriver's not working, maybe take the situation a bit more serious.
Yeah, it's very funny. In that moment when he's turning the music off and on and off and on, I actually found that quite entertaining. I had no problem with it. I mean, I know you see it differently. Of all the things that I saw that irked me off, that one wasn't as bad. But you are right. It's all about, gadgets and screwdrivers. In fact, the guy even says, oh, you've got a screwdriver, even though it looks nothing like a screwdriver. I thought that was interesting. But the whole thing with the music, I kind of got it. It kind of, I was okay with it.
The other thing, Dags, is we've had this before. Captain Jack had an invisible spaceship. Captain Jack sees this Doctor's sonic screwdriver and he says, who sonics a screwdriver, kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's like we said in a couple of episodes, they're sort of replaying some of the greatest hits from Doctor Who. But if you're not going to do it as good as the first time, don't do it.
Fair enough, because I didn't know about the whole Captain Jack thing. Whenever you say Captain Jack, I'm thinking of Pirates of the Caribbean. But yeah, the whole thing of the two of them together is like, oh, where are we going with this? And of course, they're now discussing each other's clothing, and it's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's another one of those things where they flirt. Look, maybe I have something against flirting. They flirted in the ballroom. They flirted on the way to the spaceship. They flirted in the garden outside here. They flirted in the spaceship. And it's only events keep happening that stop them sort of going further. In this case, he's asking him something, and it's sort of going further, and they find the dead body kind of thing that moves the story along. I would rather have, I don't know, I would rather have a more story driven by events that are happening to the characters, not the Doctor flirting episode.
I found it interesting when the guys are both talking and they're saying, oh, they live alone, blah, 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 blah. Well, actually, strictly speaking, the Doctor doesn't live alone at all. He's always had companions, right? The rogue guy, who knows? Who cares, right? You go, so what? So just here, you're alone and I'm alone. Suddenly, we've got a connection there that is, like that would normally not be there, and it's forcing the writing into the situation to say, well, okay, let's have two characters who are alone and they've suddenly got this connection, bang, and there you go. And go, well, strictly speaking, that's not really enough to make them join up the way they did, because as I said, the Doctor's got his companions. He might not have a relationship with anybody, but he's not like he's on his own, literally with no one around. And of course, his companion, who is actually a really good friend, is in another room about to be killed. So it made no sense. It was jarring, to say the least. The rogue guy, who cares about him, right? It's irrelevant. If he's on his own, he's a bounty hunter, so be it, Jedi. But the Doctor, it actually didn't work at all. And the Doctor doesn't need relationships. Otherwise, he would have been pursuing them for decades, right? And, of course, that just petered out absolutely nowhere. So it didn't really work. And then, of course, he gets to see inside the TARDIS.
And again, this is probably would split fans because some people might like it. But the Doctor singing Willy Wonka's Pure Imagination as he lets someone into the TARDIS. You know, on some occasions, I would actually think that would be the coolest thing ever if he's introducing people to the TARDIS and singing Pure Imagination. But because it had the romantic overtones that he's sort of bringing someone in to impress them because he wants a relationship with them, I just found it, I just groaned, kind of thing. And then the flirtatiousness continued in the TARDIS.
It's funny you should mention that, because I actually like the idea that he sang the song. I thought that was quite good. But it is a slight case, if you want to look at it from a certain point of view, of saying, instead of saying, come upstairs and see my etchings, I'll come inside and check out my TARDIS. Yeah, you are right. I mean, and he shuts the door behind him and is like, yeah, okay, where is this meant to go? And if they didn't have the issue in the ballroom, what the hell? So, yes, I see where you're coming from. But with the singing, I thought that was actually quite good.
So so we had the, I guess, the flirtatiousness in the TARDIS, and you were right. It was like, come upstairs to my editing. We had my gadget does more things than your gadget as well. It was one of those things that I was like, oh, really? So they go back to the party because let's go back before anyone else dies. So what I found disappointing and why this is a bad, Ruby is way more on top of things than the Doctor is. Ruby knows what's happening. She says there's a body upstairs. There's shapeshifters. They're killing people. They've worked out who it is. But it is one of those things where usually the roles would be the other way around, where the Doctor is the one who knows what's going on and Ruby would be the one second fiddle. Now, I don't mind that because I think Ruby is a really good character and I really like her character this whole season. It's a bad because the Doctor should always be the smartest person in the room. And when he seems like he's not the smartest person in the room, he should actually be 10 jumps ahead of everyone else. And in this episode, he's not. He's continually outplayed by everybody else.
So for everyone who's watching at the moment, what would have worked better? The rogue guy's up the stairs. Ruby gets connected into him. It's like, oh, this is a really, really cool dude. She wants to have a relationship with him. He's interested in her, but he's an alien, right? And maybe a bad alien too. And the Doctor is trying to solve the situation without even having to think about it. That's a far more plausible storyline that you could work with, because at this point, Ruby hasn't really been connected with anybody. And she's still quite young. She's in Bridgerton. oh my God, I'm going to have a relation. I've got the hots for some old English dude. It turns out he's not an actually old English dude. He's actually an alien, of whether it be Rogue or one of the other guys. And the Doctor is the only one who's switched on and is trying to prevent Ruby from doing something that is going to end up bad for her. See, off the top of my head, now I just thought of that. That to me is a far more plausible story than, as you said, Ruby is the only one who's switched on. She knows exactly what's happening, and the Doctor is so busy chasing this dude, he's oblivious to what's happening inside. And that, I agree with you, is bad Doctor Who writing. But yes, anyway, so
okay, and then because they've worked out that the aliens are into drama and want to cosplay by becoming people, they decide to dance. And it was one of those things where it's bad because it wasn't clearly written. And you don't know whether they're dancing to do it to cause a controversy because that's what the Doctor says, or because they actually want to be in a relationship. Because when they started dancing, I don't know if you saw, it pulled back and everything went dark. So it was just Rogue and the Doctor dancing together very romantically. Underneath the bad, you can see it's a well lit room, but they did this thing. Oh, it's romantic, but they're actually not meant to be doing it because it's romantic. They're meant to be putting on a show for the aliens. So. And they didn't explain a lot of stuff when the whole ring giving thing. I think we'll talk about it as it comes up to it, where the Doctor actually says, "Do something to create drama," and so he does. And then it actually seems like the Doctor's upset and doesn't know what to do. Aren't they just acting? Didn't he just say, say something to create a drama?
I thought the Doctor walked out because it was part of the stage, part of the part of the charade. I don't think he was actually seriously taken on board by that. So that's how I interpreted it anyway. So because he said they wanted to create a scene, the idea is creating a scene attracts the aliens into saying, "Oh, where's this going to lead?" and gets them out of the room. So with Rogue doing what he did, the Doctor just said, "Oh my God," it was all an act. Yeah.
Okay. I took it as he was asking for him to do something like that, and then when he got down and proposed, the Doctor didn't know what to do and was shocked. But it would make sense if it was more just the act. Why I thought it was that way is because at the end of the episode, he puts the ring on and keeps it. I don't know.
Yeah,
anyway,
that's a whole other situation. But yeah, because the idea was to try and get them out of the room. I think protect the innocents. Yeah.
So here's the other thing. I did not put this in with the good alien designs at the start of it because this was a surprise. The aliens, although they were alien and cosplaying, they didn't come across as really knowing of the actual situation, and they had to get it right, and they were not perfect. Emily, was it Emily? Emily was perfect. She did not know she was an alien. There was no hints. And one of the things I thought would have given it away is when Ruby started saying modern terms, she was going, "Oh, I don't know that word," and all of that. If you were an alien, you wouldn't know it was an anachronistic. It would have just been, "Oh, they're talking." And the other thing that I thought was really, really weird, and like this is probably just because society is so like this, you have a white actress and she becomes a black bird. And with the whole Jim Crow stuff and the controversy of blackface, I just thought that was a really weird choice. That's probably just me overthinking things, but it is one of those things where she could have become a dove or something like that. I don't think there's been any controversy over it. Also, that was the one alien design I didn't think looked great either.
So what bird is the blackbird supposed to be? A crow?
The crow, or a blackbird, I guess. But I just thought it was one of those things. Yeah. So that's probably me just overthinking things. If she was a crow, like there's a big controversy with Jim Crow and how they portray black people in America, and the whole thing with a white person being portrayed as black. I just thought that was a really strange choice for them to go with.
I think they were probably boxed into a corner saying, "Are there any white birds that are considered aggressive that they haven't used yet?" And they go, "Oh, none." And but there are plenty of black ones. And I go, "Oh, okay, fair enough." I mean, based on that rationale, you would think the English lady would have been African American or English African, whatever, to start with. That way, it keeps it consistent. But yeah, I didn't even think of that. Yeah, she's a Caucasian woman goes into a black bird. Yeah, That's an interesting observation, actually. I hadn't thought of that one. Seagulls. Yeah, actually, that kind of she got to. Yeah, so she transforms into a seagull and go, rah, 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 mine, 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 mine. Yeah, swans aren't aggressive. I mean, they're aggressive when you're trying to feed them, but not like it wouldn't have worked, So I get it. Dear. And a black character is the bad guy, isn't that, against minorities not being a bad thing? Yes, well, that's exactly right. So make of that what you will. It's a good point. Anyway.
Now, the other thing that I just thought was incredibly stupid. These aliens were nowhere near as powerful as the Doctor and Rogue were portraying them. They were like saying the aliens' plan was we're going to cosplay the planet to death. And I presume that was by they were going to get close to someone in royalty and then take their identity and start wars. But you could see they were not powerful aliens. They didn't seem to have any powers. Ruby could just shake it off when she was changing them and then beat them up. They weren't like as powerful as they seemed. The Doctor was saying, their MO would be they'd kill everyone as soon as they're found out. Really, if people pull out muskets and stuff and started shooting them, I didn't see them as these bunch of intergalactic cosplayers, shapeshifters being, up there with the Daleks and the Cybermen for destroying all of humanity. I thought actually the reaction when they revealed themselves at the ball, it would be so anachronistic that probably someone would have said, oh, it's a costume ball, because they looked almost like really good bird costumes. I thought all the screaming and stuff. And when they turned out to be aliens that you could knock out with a book, I'm like, nah, they're not the aliens that are going to be destroying the whole of Europe kind of thing.
Pretty shit is putting it simply. Greg King, I didn't think there would be any color correlation as they could cosplay anyway. That's a very good point. Yeah, weak as water in the grand scheme of things. Aside from the fact they could suck the life out of a person, you'd think, oh, you got to be kidding me. I mean, between Rogue and the Doctor and even Ruby, the three of them would be able to just punch these guys' lights out. So weak. Yeah. So they spent so much time with all the makeup and all the effects and the concept behind that. They didn't think of what makes these guys scary. I mean, they're scary to the people in 1813. But not to our modern day heroes who have sort of been there and done that and seen all this other stuff. I mean, the Doctor, you think almost laugh at them. You're thinking, mate, as you said, had faced far worse villains than this, and that was definitely were definitely not threatening by any stretch.
So here's the other thing. The Doctor has just performed incredibly irresponsible by dumping his companion and going off after Rogue. And then when he thinks the companion's dead, he absolutely has a spaz out and starts talking about having flashbacks about, I promised I'd keep her safe and all of this. Totally his own fault on that one. And again, why I didn't like the Doctor's portrayal in this episode, because he should always be the most, proactive, driving the story. And then he was just along for the ride.
Pissed me off like you wouldn't believe. I said, and all of a sudden the waterworks go on. Oh shit! I should have saved Ruby. Oh, Ruby's going to die. Blah 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 blah. It's like, well, dude, if you just kept it in your pants and were just focusing on the issue at hand, you would have been right. And it's as simple as that. And suddenly he's like, nah, I'm going to be off chasing a dude. That's my focus at the moment. Oh, my companion's about to die. Well, I'm really upset now. And I thought, who wrote this rubbish? And I'm sure there would be people saying, I mean, I'm sure even other actors who've played the Doctor have said that is so against what the Doctor was all about. They've just torn up all this history. And even as a non-fan, I thought you absolutely have dogged this up big time. So, yeah, and it did. It actually did piss me off. And I thought, how am I going to tackle that when we talk about it here tonight? And yeah, exactly right. So anyway, we're back here again, are we? Pip and Jane Baxter version 2. Totally against what the character would be. And yeah, even I saw that. So anyway.
And this is continuing on for this. Another thing that's against the character, he's like the Cholder. How long do they live for? And then Rogue says they have a lifespan of 600 years, which is ridiculous because the Doctor should know more than Rogue anyway. And he says that's a long time to suffer. Because they've killed Ruby, he actually wants to take revenge on them and make them suffer in the trap they're going to set them in for 600 years, and he's happy about it. And that is so un-Doctor Who-ish, it shouldn't be in the episode. I mean, last episode we saw that he didn't care that people were incredibly bigoted and hated him. He still wanted to save them. And then an episode later, he's like, okay, I want to torture these people rather than doing anything, capturing them and making them face justice, which again, I was like, that is not the Doctor.
Even though, as you said, it was his fault that she died, even though she didn't die, but he didn't know that. So, yeah, he's like, dude, beat yourself up with a wet briar bush. And, of course, the waterworks. Dude, mate, twice in this episode, mate, let the plumbing run through. What the hell, man?
I know. I have commented every time that they have had the Doctor cry. He's an alien. He doesn't react the same. They have totally changed it to, okay, he's a snag now. Sensitive new age guy for anyone who doesn't know that old term. That isn't bad. That isn't a bad character thing to have, but not for the Doctor. The Doctor should not cry in any situation, I don't think.
You know what the worst part was? It looked so freaking fake. Like you ever watch good shows when people are crying and go, hey, they're really upset. And you go, mate, what they've done is they've squirted in the Vaseline of the eyes. There's just all this water's pissing out. It's like, you are not actually crying, dude. You are, it is but acting is so poor. And the fact that it happens twice in this episode, you go, are you serious? And I was paying attention to it because I know you've said he seems to cry in every episode. And this one is like, mate, he's bawling. And it's like, this is just bad acting, man. It's like, who wrote this rubbish? I mean, seriously. So
I wouldn't have put it past them at this point that when he cries, little pieces of stardust roll off his cheeks as well.
Jeepers creepers. And we're still with the bads going. We can't get them out of the system.
Well, this is a plot bad. The Doctor works out, well, firstly, like they work out that Ruby is alive after all, so he doesn't have to get the 600 years revenge for everything. But, oh no, look at Ruby's slippers, Wizard of Oz. They're stuck to the ground. And the thing that doesn't make sense, he enters the room for the first time, yet somehow he has managed to place the two other pieces of the device in there already, waiting for them. And I was like, oh, gee, at least have a tiny flashback where they show how that happens or at least he puts one down and he throws the other two pieces and they land exactly where they need to because he's the Doctor and good at cricket and stuff like that. But no, it is just another one of those MacGuffins where they're already there and they're trapped. It was just a bit too easy.
I like the fact that Ruby says, yep, I'm happy to die. And it's like, but Ruby, you don't need to die. You didn't screw the pooch. The other guy did. Well, he tried to screw the pooch. But anyway, and it's just like, don't be like forgiving. It's like give him what he deserves, a bit of a mouthful. It's like you freaking bastard just left me here when you're too busy off chasing some skirt. It's like what the hell's the deal with that? And that's where this whole finally thing comes from. Is like unbelievably shocking writing. What is the deal?
This super annoyed me because the Doctor doesn't save the situation. The Doctor just sits back and he says, "Oh well, I'm not gonna push the button because my companion, my friend will die or get banished to a shadow dimension or the Phantom Zone or wherever they're going." And and he gets tricked out of having the detonator by a kiss, which again, no, the Doctor wouldn't do that. The Doctor would pick his pockets, not the other way around. You have Rogue gets the alien into the trap, who wasn't in the trap, gets Ruby out of the trap, sacrifices himself while the Doctor is just standing there again. The Doctor is like standing there like a pork chop, while everything happens around him. I always think the Doctor should drive the story and the story should react to the Doctor, not have the Doctor as a passive character where all the action goes on around him. So that was pretty disappointing.
So, believe it or not, fans, that's actually the end of our bads. Now, it is 9 o'clock. We are going to continue on because we think it's an important episode that we're going to cover off, and we're going to do our uglies. The key thing is to take out of all this is, I think, when it was written, so we've covered off the goods and the bads. Personally, I think that someone has said, we've got this story, we need to inject all these new fangle-dangle things into it, regardless of whether it's good for the narrative, good for the characters, but it is what we're trying to put into the show now. And it wouldn't have mattered if the Doctor was had chasing a guy or a girl. The principle behind it is made the thing so different that it actually goes against the grain of what they're trying to do. And I think they forcibly put this into the story at the detriment of the story. Made the thing stupid, made the aliens laughable, made the end solution completely dumb. A dude that we've only just met is carks it, and the doctor's like bawling his eyes out and wearing his ring and whatever. And you go, what the hell's the deal with that? He's met millions of aliens throughout his entire life, and all of a sudden, one guy's with for an hour, suddenly just completely losing his load over. So very poor stuff, and I think that's why I believe personally in this episode there's been an agenda being pushed for it, and whether people agree with that or not, I don't know. But as an outsider watching this show for the first time, that's what I interpreted. So, anything you want to say before we go into the uglies, dude?
No. Like, as you were discussing alternate stories, as we go along, I'll give you my idea of how I would have fixed all of this and made it a bit better. But, sometimes you can't polish a churter.
You can't indeed. The whole thing was Russell Dream time travel adventure. Yes, exactly right. Anyway, we move on to the uglies.
So this is the thing. What I came into, the aliens are pretty stupid. The first alien we see is the nice guy that becomes the cad. The second one we see take over, she came down and she was one of the kitchen staff. Now, I've done cosplay and stuff like that once in a while, but really, if you worship a TV show, do you really want to be the person stuck in the kitchen doing the dishes and cooking the food and stuff like that? I thought that was a particularly and she seemed to be the leader of the aliens as well, and she made herself a scullery maid. That just seemed weird.
You've clearly never watched Downton Abbey, mate. All the good shit happens in the kitchens downstairs. So I kind of got it, right? I agree. Well, you think she'd start at the top and work her way down, start off as the queen and become whatever. But yeah, if you ever watched Downton Abbey, mate, that's where all the intense stuff happens down underground in the kitchen. So, but yeah, it's a good point. And I actually did like that sequence of the woman comes up and goes, "What are you doing out here?" Turns out the cook is the alien. Yeah, that was actually quite a good moment. So it is all groovy stuff.
Okay, this goes into my conspiracy theory stuff, and we're going to go down the rabbit hole in this one. Do you remember I said the last couple of weeks, they always seem to be picking a word in an episode? We've had mavity, and we've had smelted, and we had chapping and chap last week, and I was waiting for it, and it came up again, and this week it was cushy. And it's the same deal. We're cushy, comfortable, like a cushion. Oh, I like that. Oh, your words amuse me. And I'm just like, there must be something. Every single episode they're doing this. And at the end of the show, we're going to go even further down the rabbit hole, because I found one I didn't even realize until today. So that'll be pretty interesting. So stick around to the end.
Yeah, I thought the word was TV, because after what you said last week, I thought, okay, I'm listening out for it, and I didn't really register with cushy, but I picked up TV, and I go, oh, okay, that's interesting. And of course, the lady even says okay as well. There is a question for you. You have to give me a very quick answer. If you had the opportunity to be a doctor, what would
if
you
there
like?
was the opportunity, if you had the role, what would you like to be? I'd be an alien for sure, because I'd like to be on the show, but no one knew who I was. So inside a Cyberman or a Dalek would be fine by me.
Lovely, no worries. And we got the it's the Klingon bird off. Sorry, it's Rogue spaceship.
Now, this is really interesting, because, as I said, there aren't many birds in sci-fi. There's a couple. Now, when he revealed the ship and it was a bird and the aliens were bird, I was like, oh, he's going to be a bad guy. He isn't a bounty hunter. He was looking at them because he's like a tourist guide that takes people to cosplay on Earth. And this is actually the alien ship, and he's going to shaft them and leave them here, and he's going to steal their spaceship. Why, if the aliens look like birds, would the spaceship also look like a bird if it wasn't their spaceship?
Very, very good point. All I know is it was important. This is a Star Trek gag. It was important that he knew where he had parked. At the end of the episode, when he dies, what happens to the ship? Is it still there, or the docky do something with it?
Well, the doctor says he puts his ship in orbit of the moon or something.
Thank you. That's right. Yep, that's okay. Because I couldn't remember what the answer was. So there you go. I love it.
Yeah. Now, here's just some of those deep cuts that probably mean nothing at all. When I saw it, I was like, oh my goodness, they've recreated the New Order album in flowers behind Rogue. And the New Order album is actually called Power, Corruption, and Lies. And that's why I was thinking they're signaling him as like a bad guy. Turns out it's just me seeing patterns in things that aren't there. But I do think that's really interesting, because they mentioned it in the episode. Rogue says in the spaceship, there's been a whole lot more paperwork since the new boss took over. And that's got to be a dig at Disney or something, because it's a line in the episode that doesn't need to be there. It could be totally wrong. The Meep also mentions, or wait until the boss finds out. So I don't know if the new boss is the same boss that the Meep is talking about, but I really like to think they had a bit of a joke in the production of this, where they said, "Oh, there's so much more paperwork since the new boss." And there's the new boss. It's evil Mickey, who's injecting all his ideas into the new series of Doctor Who.
It would be interesting to see if there are people working on the show who are having to do things in the show that they don't want to do and are against, and they go, "Oh, that's really great and grinding my gears," but hey, they're not footing the bill for it, so just got to go with it accordingly and keep their traps shut. Even Greg thought about the fact that the ship looked like a bird. I didn't pick up on it myself, but he wasn't one of the bird aliens, unless it was originally meant to be the ship for the birds. And then they changed it. They said, "Yeah, we need another ship for Rogue. You use the bird one instead." And
well, the thing I was thinking, Rogue was the only one that was hyping up the birds at being super powerful and destroying Earth, and I thought he was manipulating the Doctor to try and get rid of the birds. And the reveal was going to be, we're just here to cosplay, like we love the drama and stuff. This guy brought us along, and Rogue was going to turn out to be the evil one. I thought that would have been an interesting twist, because if we've already had Captain Jack and he's good, to have the Doctor fall in love with someone and then find out that he's like a blackguard and black-hearted and screwing everyone over, I thought that would have been a better twist in the end.
Especially if it was an alien who knew who the Doctor was and knew how to play to his weaknesses. That might have been something interesting as well. So, yeah. But it wasn't to be.
And this was the other, the ugly thing, what I was talking about earlier. When you have the flashback to how Ruby survived, if you were really an all-powerful alien and you got snatched away, so your like taking over powers didn't work, don't you think you'd have some shield or protection or gun or something? And the fact that she hits the bird over the face with a book, and the bird comes back later and says, "Look what she did," and the beak is bent sideways. I just thought that was, okay, it's done for comedy. I don't know why they were pitching that level at the episode. You either have them as like really menacing aliens, or you have them as comedy aliens. But she was the serious alien that seemed to know what was going on, and then she becomes the comedy alien.
Did you like the idea that, as they showed, as they went for their flashback, that Ruby and her connected, and using the earrings, she was able to convince the other alien to do something? I can't remember what it was now. Did that work for you? Was that okay? So in the end, Ruby stayed as Ruby?
Well, what happened? She was gonna be taken over, and she remembered the earrings had battle mode, so she put the earrings into battle mode and beat the crap out of the alien. But the thing is, they did this thing I hate in cinema and TV, where from outside the room you hear Ruby screaming and lightning going off. But then when they do the flashback, that isn't what happened at all. She put battle mode on and beat the crap out of the alien. So it is sort of one of those bait and switch situations, which is why I put it in the ugly. It wasn't bad, but I just didn't like it. So I thought it was worth bringing up.
No, fair enough. And Shane said it was bent the wrong way as well. So there you go. You are right. Yeah, bent back is a Daffy Duck thing. We like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, and this was the whole thing as well, where there was a lot of word salad in this episode. The dance, the drama, the emotion. Oh man, it's cosplay. I won't read all of it because we're going over time, but the outrage. But could it be like the TV signals beamed out across the stars? Now, that is actually a very Doctor Who concept, because as people know, there's missing Doctor Who episodes, and it has been floated that they're all out there and aliens on another planet could be watching missing episodes of Doctor Who. But they have this thing where they're talking about cosplay, and then they say they're going to slaughter everyone. Now's the time for the season finale kind of thing. I did think, again, the aliens weren't going to slaughter everyone. They were birds that were taking over one person at a time for their cosplay event. It just didn't sort of match up to the expectations that he was setting.
Indeed.
The ugly. Do you know, it's not bad, but it's not good. you're faster running, not holding hands with someone.
Yes,
Now the
that's true.
now they've done this because the doctor has a lot of time has sort of said, "Come with me if you want to live," or held hands and said, "Run," and dragged a companion. That is generally because they're almost shell
Yeah.
shocked and have to be dragged out of a dangerous situation, not because they want to run around holding hands. And I just thought that's just pathetic.
Yeah, and it's also usually if one person is faster than the other, and they can pull the other one with them, but they're both fully grown adult males. They should be just doing the massive bolt. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, that's just dumb.
Yeah.
Yes.
And this whole thing, he's just met this guy. The guy thinks he's an alien killer. And they're doing this whole I've lost everyone, you've lost someone, I've lost more, I lost all of them. How'd you know
Mm.
that? Just because I know, kind of thing. Would you travel with me? So the doctor has such an instant connection. Poor old Ruby is in the house dealing with shape shifting aliens, and the doctor's already setting up a replacement. Again, okay, it's not probably should have been in the bad, but it just was ugly for me where all this serious stuff's going on, and for 3/4 of the episode, the doctor's running around and flirting with someone.
Yeah, he just wants to shack up with the dude that he's only just met, and is like that is just so unrealistic. It's not funny. Oh, you're alone. You're all good, mate. We're good to go. You'd almost think if the rogue had said, "Yep, I'll come with you," the doctor says, "Fine." We're in the TARDIS. We've taken off, and halfway across the galaxy, he goes, "I think I've forgotten something." Ridiculous. Totally unrealistic for the character, but we've covered that off already.
Okay, and this is the first time we've done this because I don't usually look forward at the next time trailer. But while they're in there flirting, the TARDIS groans. As you can see, Disney Plus puts up TARDIS groans. It was probably groaning with the rest of the audience. But the doctor says she gets upset with bounty hunters. But this is not the first time we have heard this TARDIS groan. So I didn't go back and look through all the episodes, but it's happened in I think it first happened in Wild Blue Yonder, which was the second special, where the TARDIS like kind of got a cup of coffee dumped into the console and it went a bit chicken oriental and took
Mm.
the doctor to the edge of the universe. You heard that groan as the TARDIS was repairing itself. And then we heard the groan again when they went back to the 60s and they're getting out of the TARDIS to meet the Beatles. And the TARDIS groans and the doctor actually says, well, that's unusual. So it's actually part of the plot and scripted. And then it's in this episode where the doctor just says, oh, it's just like doesn't like bounty hunters. But when Mel is talking in the next time trailer, you also hear that same TARDIS groaning as well. And I'm wondering, it's got to be something if it's in the trailer as well. But then
Which I
again,
think
I might
relates
be
to
looking
this.
at
Is that right?
patterns that aren't there. Now we have the trailer. And things are happening next week. It looks like it's going to be a really good episode next week, fingers crossed. Down the bottom, we have the actress that's been in every episode. And when you see her, there is a very quick, and it was very hard to get screen caps, there is a very quick procession of monstrous faces. I presume it's meant to be her, but what if what the old Ruby was saying to everyone in 73 was revealing that's what Ruby actually is, a monstrous demon, and they could see that image in their head whenever they saw Ruby?
Mm.
Because the episode is called The Legend of Ruby Sunday. So there's going to be some twist about her. So that's one of the things that I guess we'll find out next weekend. But I thought that was pretty interesting too. Now, thanks for everyone hanging around. There's just I think 2 more slides, and this is me going down the conspiracy rabbit hole.
Go for it, dude.
Now, I've said a couple of times because of all this word play on different stuff that maybe they're in the land of fiction. Maybe when they fell through the hollows of time or whatever and released the Celestial Toymaker, that the echoes of the toy maker exist. That's why we had the maestro and he was the toy maker's son. But the interesting thing is in, again, Wild Blue Yonder, the TARDIS, when it's sort of blowing up and going to pieces, use the HADS, which is the Hostile Action Displacement System, which means the TARDIS disappears and repairs itself and comes back when it's safe. The Doctor has used that once before deliberately, where he took the TARDIS out of time and space because they were getting buried in lava and he didn't think the TARDIS could handle it, and they wound up in the land of fiction. Now, it's a really big callback for them to go to an obscure 60s plot device and bring it back again, and then all this really weird stuff happens with repeated words. So I was thinking that everything after Wild Blue Yonder, when the toy maker turns up, they're not in this reality. But then I found something that like blows up my own theory. You know how I say all these words keep coming up? The Children in Need special before the series start did the same thing. And it did it with Dalek because they're trying to work out what they're going to call the Daleks in Genesis of the Daleks. And they do this whole, that's a Dalek. Yes, that's it. That's a good word. That's great. Exterminate. Yes, that's a good word too. Oh, I like all this stuff. Thank you. Thank you. And so this happened before. But the really interesting thing in the Children in Need special that I think no one has really picked up on, because it was just a special shown months before the series came back, the Doctor actually says the timelines and canon are rupturing. Why would the Doctor say canon is rupturing? Because you don't like live a life where you have personal canon. You live in a timeline and they can rupture, but the Doctor is actually talking about the show, that canon is rupturing, which is really weird. And that's why we've got another Doctor slipped in there, because we're not in the current reality. Now, what is happening, I have really no idea, but I put these theories out here because if something sticks in a couple of weeks, I like to be able to say, well, I spotted that.
Which Doctor, who said that the canon was rupturing? Who said
that? Was
Doctor
the 14th Doctor. So that was okay. David Tennant. You know how he came back for 3 specials? Before the specials, he did a Children in Need appeal that had Davros with legs. And all the controversy was they changed Davros. But I watched it again today because I was trying to work out where the TARDIS is going wrong. This is why I went there. Sorry. I was going back because there's something wrong with the TARDIS. The TARDIS does not land properly anymore. And the first time it crashed into the wall and a Dalek was the Children in Need special. Then in Wild Blue Yonder, it crashed into the wall. Then in various other episodes, Space Babies, The Devil's Cord, it's actually wrecked people's houses. Now, the TARDIS has never done this before. And now the TARDIS is groaning and making weird sounds, dematerializing wrong. I thought, oh, there's something wrong with the TARDIS. So I went back to the first time, and that's why I found the word thing again. And I find it really weird that they're picked up on words and it's carried through the whole series. Could all be just the production team having fun and nothing comes of it. But written into so many episodes, I think we're going to see something in the future.
Children Need Special was filmed after he was the 14th Doctor, so it could tie into the storylines of this season. The comment about the canon is rupturing, that could be a subtle way of saying it's going from the BBC to Disney.
Yep.
Disney are saying, yep, we're changing everything because that's the thing and that is part of the canon. So in years to come, there could actually potentially be a, dare I say, Doctor Who pre-D and AD, pre-Disney, after Disney, if they end up changing a lot of things. Who knows? Well, but that's an interesting observation. Someone slipped that one in. Yeah, go
on. I had a ruptured canon and I went to the doctor and they had to give me a colonoscopy. But it's all okay now.
Jesus crikey. You can tell this one's running over time. My God. Well, guess what, fans? That's the end of the episode. It's time to do the review. The Rotten Time Lords, Mr. Aaron. Based on how many bads and uglies we had on this episode, you want to give me a clue as to what you think this episode rated as?
Well, I have to give it a better score than Space Babies because I really didn't think it was as bad as that, even though there was a lot of bad. So I'm giving it a 4 rank rotten rating.
4 rank. I'm going to make sure I go back. Hang on, go back. And there we go. Here we go. Look at that. So I was safe to assume that this is not Crinoid approved there in the case, Mr. Aaron.
Absolutely not. This is Harrison Chase buried in the compost. This is not Crinoid approved at all. So it's not quite in the rotten, but it was a bit whiffy, I've got to say.
Whiffy. Greg thought the comment was just a dig at the fans who complain about canon changes in the show. It's certainly possible. So, but we're already starting to see changes to the Doctor Who character in this series alone, in this series, the actual series so far, that would go against the grain of all the previous, what are we now, 14th Doctor. So, it's open to interpretation. So, after Dot and Bubble last week, which I actually thought was quite good and was really interesting, and it was like really thought-provoking, this was just rubbish. Didn't work for me at all. And I was, as I said, I was pissed off that Ruby was left to her own devices while the Doctor was out doing his thing. So Again, hating on the fans, yeah. So, and it wouldn't have mattered if he was chasing a guy or a female. It's irrelevant, right? So those people go, "Oh my God, Dags is homophobic and all that other rubbish." It's got nothing to do with it. It's completely uncharacteristic for the Doctor to do what he did, right?
Yeah.
It's as simple and as blunt as that, right? And if people out there saying it was a great episode because they're now pushing the whole LGBT2 bullshit, look at the storyline, look at the characterization, and go, actually, no, they did a bad job of doing what they did. And it was.
I have one thing to tell you before I go. I solved a question from last week.
What was that?
You know how you said, what if they stopped her? Would if they didn't kill her, would they have to stop killing people because they were killing in alphabetical?
Yep.
Well, the leader of the Earth or the human resistance, he had a B as a last name, so they must have continued, even if they didn't get all the Bs.
Yeah, so there must come a point when they go, we can't find the next one on the line. We'll just jump over. Maybe they got a time period or something, like maybe a 20-minute, half hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, and then they move on to the next one. Because otherwise the whole system will just shut down if they can't find the particular letter. Please don't paint the TARDIS in rainbow colours. I'm sure someone has done that already. Anyway, so we're going as far as we can go. Very, very quickly, I'm not going to talk about Sci-Fi Zone. I will just mention about Aaron's shop. If you want to yap more about this particular episode, I'm sure that if you want to go rogue, go into Aaron's Collectibles and have a natter to the lad about this particular thing.
And we'll have
a
fantastic chat about Killer Crocodile in the Northern Territory.
Yes, exactly right. So there you go, fans. Whether you agree with us or not is irrelevant. It is purely our opinion. We are entitled to it after all. And hang on, I pressed the wrong button. And that's just the way it goes. But hopefully some of you will say, you know what we've presented is thought-provoking, and go, you know what, there's something in that to take on board. As to where the show goes to now, we've only got 2 episodes left. We shall wait and see. What do you reckon, Mr. Aaron? Very exciting stuff.
Well, I'm really looking forward to next week's episode. They're being shown in the cinema in the UK, which usually means they're event episodes.
Okay, there you go. Well, let's see if the docky ends up bawling his eyes out in that episode too. I can't believe the series is ending. Oh my God. There you go. Very, very cool. All right, we're going to buzz off, leave you to it. We'll see you back next Tuesday to discuss whatever that episode happens to be. Very good. Party hard, rock on, and we'll see you then.
Have a good night, guys.